Greetings to all. My name is Mikhail Woodruffe, and I'm very happy to be part of this year's Caribbean Theology Conference, sharing specifically in this youth forum with my topic, Towards a Theology of Caribbean Contemplative Justice. I know the topic might be quite an interesting and probably unique one, and I think the origin of it comes from my own background being a Carmelite friar. The Carmelite order is known for being contemplative and active. Our contemplation, our way of life leads us into action and justice. So I offer in this paper, in this presentation, the interconnections among our Caribbean culture, which already has unspoken of elements of contemplation and social justice, and how it's so important in our efforts as people of God to do our social justice discussions and work out of a contemplative glance. I'll give some definitions, starting with St. Teresa of Avila, a very well-known Carmelite mystic and Carmelite thinker and reformer who lived from 1515 to 1582 in Spain. Teresa says, "Contemplative prayer and contemplation, in my opinion, is nothing else than a close sharing between friends. It means taking time frequently to be alone with the one who we know loves us." A more contemporary person gives a definition of contemplation. Richard Rohr, a very well-respected writer and theologian in the United States who runs the Center for Action and Contemplation, he says contemplation might be described as entering a deeper silence and letting go of our habitual thoughts, sensations, and feelings in order to connect to a truth greater than ourselves. I offer that within our Caribbean culture, we already have these elements of contemplation in very natural and everyday ways. I think of certain activities like shelling peas, cleaning sorrel, grating coconut, braiding hair, sweeping with a coquille broom, and many other very everyday acts that have this contemplative way about it, that we do these acts with a sense of deep contemplation, recognizing the source of deeper divine within us, and this call to interact with our God, seeing eye to eye with God, especially with the beauty of silence. We could sure admit in the last year and a half, going on 2 years, 2020 to 2021, one of the effects of the pandemic is that all of us in one way or another have been spending more time alone. And for many, this has caused a lot of anxiety and frustration. And for others, it's offered an experience of deeper reflection, inner thought and meditation, and eventually for many, contemplation. And for many of us, both. What I offer is that as a Caribbean people, we already have these elements of contemplation. Yes, we like Carnival, our fetes, Marshall, Sparrow, Morgan Heritage, whatever music and interest you are into. We do like our times to celebrate and to be social with others. But even before this experience of the pandemic, we have loved and we have been in touch with quiet moments. I think about the many mothers, grandmothers, grandfathers, and fathers who wake up before anybody is awake in the house, and they take that quiet moment very early in the morning to sip their fresh cocoa, their coffee, their tea, to have this experience of contemplation before they begin their day. Pope Francis, exactly about a year ago in October 2020, wrote a powerful document called Fratelli Tutti, Brothers and Sisters, We All Are. And in it, in chapter 43, he speaks about the fact that many of us have experienced isolation even before COVID-19, and that in that isolation we lack moments of silence. Hopefully we see the irony of that even when we're isolated, we may not have the experience of deeper silence. Continuing on that line of thought, Pope Francis, again writing just very recently, about 2 weeks ago, he wrote to Popular Movements, October 2021. And he referred to what he called a silent pandemic that has been afflicting everyone, especially our children, teenagers, and young people of every social class. He described it as chronic anxiety, hyperconnectivity, and disorientation. He said that young people are missing and lacking a friendship where love revives. I offer that in these times, particularly our youth are experiencing a sense of isolation where they're not able to truly be alone and experience the peace of silence. In this paper and presentation, I am hoping that we can offer something here to turn the tide so that by silence and the experience of contemplation, people of God, especially our young people, may be driven, may be encouraged into action to works of justice. Continuing with that Fratelli Tutti document, Pope Francis in chapter 49 says, as silence and careful listening disappear, replaced by a frenzy of texting, a new lifestyle is emerging where we exclude all that we cannot control. This blocks the kind of serene reflection that could lead us to shared wisdom. As we come together this week as Caribbean thinkers, artists, social activists, and so many others, the encouragement here is that as we are called to act and to be involved in justice, we first require that experience of silence and contemplation. I ask our reference to the very popular Good Samaritan passage, Luke 10:25-37, and in imaging that Good Samaritan passing this man who's in need of help, have we ever thought that that Samaritan would have had a moment of contemplation? He would have had a moment where he would have thought, should I? Must I? Is it okay to help this man? And he made the choice to indeed do this act, this beautiful act of justice. But before that, I posit and suggest that he would have had an experience of deep contemplation. St. John of the Cross, a wonderful mystic and thinker again in the Carmelite tradition, also from Spain around the time of Teresa of Avila, he describes contemplative prayer and contemplation as silence, silent love. May this discussion lead us to silent love that begins from that silence and moves outward in our actions of justice and seeking equality. I wish to share a story of a priest in the Roman Catholic Church and who was part of the Carmelite order who has since recently died. His name was Peter Hind, and he was one of the leading persons in the United States in the era of the civil rights with Martin Luther King Jr. He was there as a Catholic priest with his Carmelite students, with his seminarians, leading some of the marches and being very active in the work of justice. And one of the things he offered was that he developed, and he shared this with me personally when I met him some years ago, he shared a very personal and deep friendship with Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael, who we know originally from Trinidad and then migrated to the United States and was very involved in a lot of the justice work in that era. And he shared that Stokely Carmichael, who at one point had acknowledged himself to be an atheist, had gone with this Peter Hind, this Carmelite priest, along with the Carmelite brothers to a retreat. They went off to an isolated area where they could be quiet and pray near a lake. It sounded like a beautiful scene. And Kwame, or Stokely, depending on the time period as he was known, looked out at the mountains. He looked out at the created beauty. And he looked across to Peter, his dear friend, this Carmelite priest, this young Trinidadian black activist, this white Catholic priest. And as Stokely or Kwame looked at his friend Peter, he said, I look at all of this beauty, and in this silence, I do wonder, there is a God. I do hope that this presentation encourages us to see the beautiful link of contemplation and justice, and that before any act of justice and action as people of God, we are called to this deep experience of contemplation, especially in silence. Thank you so much.